Hey, everybody, welcome back to Practical Liberty. My name's Henry Bingaman. I'm excited about this episode because a lot of you know me as a freelancer, which is a specific type of entrepreneurship, but not the one that everybody pictures when they hear the word entrepreneur. But there's a lot of different types of entrepreneurship. There's the Mark Zuckerbergs who drop out of college and start billion-dollar businesses. But there's also a type of entrepreneurship where it's a side hustle, or you can be a full-time employee and a full-time entrepreneur. And I'm bringing on somebody who's gone through a bunch of different types of entrepreneurship. He's also a Bitcoiner, so I'm sure we're going to get into that at the end. But Bobby Shell, thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, you too. Thank you for having me on, Henry.
So your journey through entrepreneurship is pretty interesting. I remember I read your bio. You started at 11 years old. You started a lawn care company, right? That you grew to like 20 some customers, which is pretty cool for a kid.
Yeah. My dad, he was always like very good at sales and like loved people. And it actually in first grade where kids sell gift wrap, he would like take me door to door to sell it. And most kids, what's really funny, and I think this is like an important caveat for parents if you have children, a lot of kids at school, their parents would take their stuff to work and sell it to people. My dad would walk with me door to door from the time school ended till sundown before dinner. And he would stand three doors down and let me learn how to sell and talk to people, like cold calling, knocking on doors in first grade. So he kind of like warmed me up to being outgoing and learning sales. And then at 11 started a lawn care company. And yeah, I learned the meaning of running a business and just, getting enough no's to get the yeses. And here we are today.
Yeah, my first company was first company. I was like 10 or 12 years old, started a dog walking company, which was like three of my
Awesome.
neighbors for actually the first time I got paid. I realized this today. I got paid in silver coins. He gave me a silver walking liberty every time I walked his dog, which is at this point the best deal you could have gotten if I held on to those. And I did hold on to those coins. But then I
That's
started
awesome.
getting $2 or $5 a walk. So I don't know. I started
Nice.
young in entrepreneurship. You learn a little bit as a kid. You don't learn as much as you do when you get out in kind of the real world. Like you're not balancing finances and all that stuff. So you ended up going to college for marketing, I believe, and then you stayed on the entrepreneurial path, right? You were head of marketing at Marketing 360, I believe, right? Which is I mean, that's head of marketing at a big marketing company is kind of like running the company in some ways. But you were doing entrepreneurial activities on the side then, or were you strictly an employee after college for a little while?
Yeah, I was an employee for 10 years there. I managed a team of 40 people and we focused on, doing digital inbound marketing for all the small business verticals that are so popular right now for acquisition entrepreneurship, which is a big topic we're seeing on Twitter. And just for, yeah, small business owners, e-commerce, websites and whatnot. And during that time I was an entrepreneur. I would do my own like e-commerce stuff and like just, work here and there. But from 2013 to 2020, that was one window of time, post COVID, like side hustles, entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
It feels like the tone has changed online. Like awareness has changed, like people starting LLCs has increased. The job data today, which I'm sure a lot of people saw, it's like one of the biggest dips in like W-2 employment, and more people than ever in like 30 years or something have like multiple jobs. Very interesting kind of shift in just how we approach work as a nation. So yeah, a lot of things going on that are very interesting right now.
So you have a couple ventures you're involved in right now. There's Voltage, which is the Bitcoin Lightning Network company, which we're going to probably talk about a little bit towards the end of this podcast. You also have you're co-founder of another marketing firm, right? Imprint Digital. So you've got a lot of irons in the
Um,
fire here, or is that
yeah, Imprint Digital. When I left my last
okay?
agency, we started Imprint Digital. It's a digital marketing agencies focused on SMBs who are in growth stage,
Okay.
and really our focus is helping small business owners get to scale and find success when it comes to digital inbound marketing. And our CEO, Alex Wells, leads the day to day. Like you mentioned, I work at Voltage. I'm VP of marketing there. But after working at Voltage for the last 2 years and us having Imprint running for, 2 years and I think 3 months now, we have about 14 employees. I've just had it on my heart to help people understand more about small business entrepreneurship and how it relates to Bitcoin and how the two intertwine. And that's like the one really unique angle I have that no one else really has talked about on the internet. So I was like, I need to, do my part and, try to help people and add value. But it's been a wonderful journey and like a great opportunity because small businesses are the backbone of America. It's majority of the jobs. And being a small business owner is incredibly challenging. Most small businesses never hit $1 million in revenue. 75% fail. And of the 25% that make it past that first few years, another 50% of them fail. And there's just so much that it takes from operations, sales, and marketing in order to be successful. It's meaningful to do something to help those people who have a heart for entrepreneurship. And being a marketer, especially with the power of the internet nowadays, we're using Zoom. This is essentially digital marketing going down right now in a shape or form. There's more capability for anyone with a heart for entrepreneurship to present themselves online and to be able to help people do that. It's a real blessing.
So how do you, I mean, I love all that. How do you view yourself in the within the entrepreneurial framework? Because you do have kind of a job, right, as the VP of marketing. It's a high level job, but it's still an employment contract, if I'm right about that.
W-2?
Yeah, you W-2 at that. But then you have, you're doing content creating, which by the way, you have a great YouTube video channel. I love watching your videos. They're very concise. The
Thank
book,
you.
the chapter summaries are great. So you have just a lot of irons in the fire. Where on the entrepreneurial scale from like pure entrepreneur to kind of side hustle entrepreneur to entrepreneur to I don't know. I've heard somebody once call themselves a small business innovator, but they just worked in a couple companies. Where do you kind of place yourself on that scale?
As a young kid, by having a lawn care company, you learn about business. You need to understand how money functions. That was the way my father viewed it. Like, let's help my son learn how to understand money, how to manage it so he has a rational head when he gets into the real world. And like you said, in the real world, it's not the same. We're dealing with adults here. Like when you're 11 running a company, they're just like, hell, this kid's working hard. Let's
Yeah.
support him and let him mow our
Yeah.
yard. It's different in the real world. I'm not too big into side hustles. I think some people definitely need those. The way I view it is, and the way I'm approaching it, like a lot of folks online, it seems like popular and hot to like start a holding company. Michael Girdley and some others have done this, Nick Huber. But 2, 3 years ago, my partner and I, Alex, whom I've known for 10 years, I was just like, we need to start a digital marketing company. He actually started it and invited me on and said, hey, I want a co-founder and I choose you. And I was like, absolutely. Like I introduced him to his wife. We all met at my last company and he's an incredible partner. And, a month into that, we didn't have any revenue. He was taking the risk, he was managing it. And I was looking for jobs in Bitcoin because I'm passionate about Bitcoin and landed a job that could pay my bills. And he's running the day to day in Imprint. But the way I view it is it's not a side hustle. Like for my family, I know working a W-2 isn't going to, transform my life. I don't believe it will. I used to do sales and I made a lot, but I want to craft a future where I have control and I'm not subject to, counterparty risk or a third party. Like, I know you have a libertarian audience and people who would understand that. And our leadership at Voltage is incredible. I love our CEO and founder, Graham, but I've always been an entrepreneur. I enjoy business and I just wanted ways to build a future where I control it. So, yeah, we built a holding company. We have Imprint Digital, and there's other businesses and operators that we're helping put in place to lead other organizations we're spinning up. But I still have a W-2 job, and over lunches on the weekends, I work on the things that are important to me. And when it comes to content creation, it's very common to pay someone overseas to like do editing for you. You just have to shoot and speak from the heart. And luckily for me, the Lord gave me an ability to talk and I can, shoot things typically one take and leave it to them to edit. And they do a good job, doing right by me, making proper edits. So I'm just like grateful for the opportunity to do that.
Yeah, the way I view it, I think the distinction between like job and freelance and entrepreneurship, I wish it would disappear faster, but it's kind of disappearing as it goes. I think what the way people should be thinking about this is where can I provide the most value? Where can I provide the most value to the world, to this community, to whatever I'm passionate about? Because if you start thinking, where can I provide value? Like, where am I best suited to further a cause, further a mission, provide value? I think you'll find your spot naturally. And like these labels of entrepreneur versus freelancer versus W-2 versus whatever, they're useful. I mean, they're obviously necessary from a tax perspective to keep track of, but that's not the right way to think about your career as in life. I don't know. I think people have a divine mission to provide value, right? What else are you going to do in your life? This is what bothers me about some entrepreneurs that just move money around or play financial games is they're not actually providing money. They're just getting in the middle. They're doing rent seeking, and that's I don't know. It's not satisfying. We actually talked about this a little
Yeah.
bit before we started. Is that there's these some of these Bitcoiners that just want to hodl their coins, wait till it goes to 10 million a coin, and then flick off their job and go do whatever.
Yeah.
What kind of life is that? Like, what is your mission? Where are you providing value by just holding Bitcoin? I don't know. What do you think about any of that?
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. And I think in society, we need people who are going to hold exceptional standards. Like, I truly believe in that. And I'm a believer in Jesus Christ. He's my savior. He died for my sins. I understand, you know, repenting for sins and living a life for Christ. There's a world of opportunity that comes from that and just the grace that he has given us. And the fact that he's given us this opportunity to serve others is important. be in the world, but not be of the world. And you're absolutely right. Like rent seeking, just like buying money or money, buying money, getting Bitcoin and hoarding it, or even just arbitraging like real estate. Like one reason I kind of been slowly like exiting real estate over the last 2 years is when doing syndications, I had a buddy who like led sales. And when he was on site, a little Spanish lady was like, "You're not just going to buy this up and fix it up and increase rents on us, are you? Because we can't afford it already." And when I heard that, I was just like, this is why I'm specifically into Bitcoin. I don't want to be someone who just arbitrages broken interest rates. And if I'm going to leverage an interest rate, it's going to be for an SBA loan or creating value locally. It's not just going to be buying real estate. And yeah, you can get rich doing it. I'm not here to like bash those people or debate it because I still actively invest in real estate. But I want to do things that are going to materially impact the local community because one thing I've noticed post COVID and being in customer service for 25 years and working at places like Chick-fil-A and Starbucks back when Starbucks had quality leadership is people, the standards are lower. We need better leadership. We need people who are going to teach the next generation about quality. And I want to do that. And being in business, it's everyone talks about money and revenue online because majority of people don't have $2 to rub together to pay an unexpected bill. But the reason most people enter entrepreneurship, if you're reading Twitter, it's because they can make more money. But at the end of the day, the most important thing, it's about you have the opportunity to make an impact locally in your community and serve people in the best way possible. And if you're a steward to serving them and taking care of them the way God intended for us to love one another, you're going to thrive and be successful. And if the money is the motivator, you're going to struggle. People see through that. And I'm also pretty vocal about like the whole personal brand thing. Like when it comes to the internet, people view personal brands as a way to present yourself. It's really easy to present yourself in this doctored way, but you can also destroy your reputation quickly. And I think it's important. And there's a nuanced conversation of personal brands only go so far. And it's very important to view what we're doing as an opportunity. So like what you shared, I like really align with that. And I believe in that too, that we're meant to serve others and be a good steward of what we've been given.
So one of the things you brought up is an arbitrage experience with SBA loans. So one of the topics that you've been talking about a lot is acquisition entrepreneurship. So what do you see as the difference? Because for me, it scares me to do acquisition type. I don't like making. Well, it's funny because I've done angel investing, which is sometimes crazy amounts of money, but I don't know. I view that as like an investment that could go right or wrong. Something with the
Yeah.
acquisition is I worry that I don't know the nuances of the businesses I'm acquiring. Like I have a friend that's actively looking to acquire. It's actually a mastermind partner. He's in a group with me, and he has like 20 years of international business experience, speaks like 4 languages, open stores. He's opened stores in Mexico and China and all over the place. And he's now
Nice.
like tired of working for a big company and wants to buy something. And every time he does his due diligence, he like just finds out there's something in there that either he doesn't quite understand, so he's not comfortable buying it, or they've been butchering their books in some way, trying to hide money. So can you kind of talk about the risks and opportunities of this, acquiring a business instead of starting one from scratch?
Yeah, that's such a good example, Henry, because when you go through the diligence process, you're gonna reveal everything if you're doing proper diligence, and there's always going to be problems. Like you're never going to find a perfect deal, but yeah, competency matters. Like I think the first thing when it comes to acquisition entrepreneurship is looking at skill sets. Like, are you an operations person? Are you a salesperson? Are you a marketing person? Like I'm a marketing person, and a lot of these businesses that are established, they lack marketing funnels. They lack simple things like review generation, SEO strategy, all this stuff. So I truly believe marketers have one of the greatest opportunities in the world at buying and acquiring these businesses. But when it comes to acquisition entrepreneurship, to take a step back, it's a 30-plus-year-old thing. People have been doing this for a very long time, like training for it and then hunting out businesses. And it's a gut-wrenching and very hard thing to do. Like a lot of people, they take 2 years off work, search full time, and they set aside, 150, 200,000 plus dollars to live off of until they find that business. And they either self-fund it, so they're, maybe seeking a smaller deal and using their own capital, or they might do what's called a search fund, where you raise money from others, which allows you to pursue a bigger deal. And some people don't like giving up equity, but I'm sure you've heard a lot of people say this before. It's like, I would rather have, 1 to 2% of many companies than 100% of one. And there's benefit to raising money because you can have the insights, the connections, the network of these people who are supporting you. They can help you solve problems. It's great to have people in your corner. So it depends on what this person's risk tolerance is, their interests. on how they approach it. But it is very risky. Most businesses fail, but the thing about acquisition entrepreneurship that's kind of the line in the sand that I think gets people's ears sparked is once a business does make it over that million in revenue mark and you use an SBA loan, statistically less than 1% of those businesses fail. And the question is, well, why is that? And it's because they have operational processes in place. They probably have some sales, they have reoccurring customers. They've kind of worked through the tough stuff. And now you can acquire this business that has gaps in what they're doing where you can come in and provide value. So, as a marketer, for instance, typically when a small business comes in to Imprint Digital, my team will do an audit, will very swiftly identify here's where we can create value for you. And for those people that are established, it's always much easier than a business from scratch. Like I've had a one truck HVAC guy come to us before at my last company, and he has a $500 budget and he's struggling to get work, and he kind of beats you up because he's stressed and it's really hard. But you have a company who's established and they ask you to do marketing and you're like, let's fix these 5 things, and you do it, and man, you are cruising. And it's the same problem these entrepreneurs face. You want, like, a lot of people want to acquire something that's working because they want to take on a little less risk, but it is still risky.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that terrifies me is debt. So when I was 22 starting this business, my copywriting business, quote unquote, started an LLC because tax advantage. But I didn't make, I had a good first year. I got a couple clients right out of the gate. But that was luck and I didn't really know what I was doing. So the next full year I lived off credit cards, ran up like $25,000 in credit card debt, which why did my bank give me a $25,000 line of credit at 23 years old? That was stupid. But I mean, I was terrified and like I was scarred by debt. So like I'm scared to go take big loans. Like I bought this house in cash. I buy my cars in cash. I don't like debt. I'm almost Dave Ramsey in that way. So, I mean, how do you talk to people about that? Like an SBA loan, you got to pay back, right? I mean, there is a cash flow situation there. I guess
Yeah.
how do you view the risk of debt?
That's a great question. I'm not necessarily a huge fan of debt either. I try to, and I've always like paid cash for my cars. I took advantage of the 0% interest once when I had kids because we were
Yeah.
doing that great 2020, 2021 time. But I'm risk averse like you. And the one thing like I would tell people is it's a personal decision. I don't necessarily know what to tell others than that. For me, I'm a bit more risk averse. Like I prefer to invest my own money versus others. I don't like having to manage other people's money, at least at this phase in life. I feel like a lot of people over the last 2 years that got into real estate syndication because it was such a hot thing to do, they took a lot of money and a lot of people are underwater and hurting right now. I think if you are going to take out debt, be intentional to like learn the pros and cons of each. And if you're going to take money from other people, please like get a good track record under your belt so that they can make good decisions. Because again, this comes back to what we were saying earlier. You're a steward to these other people if you're accepting their capital, and it's important to return it to them. So, yeah, I guess I don't have much more to say other than that.
All right. What types of different businesses are the best for like the acquisition capitalist entrepreneurship? Because I think of things like,
Yeah.
there's SaaS companies that you could take over, there's websites you could take over, but there's also a local plumber that has, 10 trucks and wants to retire, like
Yeah.
a local HVAC guy, like you talked about. So what are I don't know, is there a way of thinking about which type on the ground, on the internet? Like, how do you view, is there a difference in the thought process when acquiring them?
Yeah, I have opinions on this, and it could be an hour-long conversation in itself. HVAC and plumbing is like super popular in the private equity world. So if you're getting into this, like definitely research what private equity groups are into. The multiples on those, they might sell at 2, 3, 4x, 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago. Now they're selling it like 8x plus just because people want to get in and get a foothold into the industry and area to then roll up other companies, meaning buy competitors and bundle them together. But, pest control is very popular, lawn care is very popular. Reoccurring business is very popular. And one thing that's also key for sustainability is having like a subscription pattern of sorts, like pay 50 a month and get premier service for HVAC. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different types of businesses, but those are really popular. And I think for whatever people are doing, like you brought up a really good point earlier, Henry, is like you may not understand like certain types of businesses, or when you analyze it, there's complexity and like problems. I think people should really consider like either A, if they're going to manage the day to day, is this something I believe I can overcome the learning curve or pick up pretty quickly? Or B, am I buying this thing because I want to put an operator and CEO in place? And that's much harder than it sounds. People simplify that online, but it is pretty challenging because you have to have someone that has the same buy-in and just care for the business as you do as the investor and the person placing the money into that business.
Yeah. So, all right, let's say you find a business that matches, like maybe you've been, I don't know, an electrician for 10 years and you're looking to buy a business. You've saved up some money and there's a couple people selling. How do you figure out what you need to still learn? And then where do you go to learn it if you're going at the acquisition route?
So one thing that was really cool, I don't know who said it recently, but there's a lot of great writers and thinkers on Twitter, or X as we call it now. And one gentleman said specifically, he only reads books that are like over 40 or 50 years old. And before I started making content, I always joked around and said to people on Twitter, just say obvious things and your account will grow. And then I was kind of humbled and put back into my seat earlier this week, because I heard, I think it was Sahil Bloom, he was bringing up like, put out content because there's someone out there who will get value from it. And I realized it clicked for me. The reason I say to people like, say obvious things on Twitter to get a following is because it's not obvious to everyone, you know?
Right.
In some ways, we're obligated to share these things because someone will get value from it. So I was like, in my mind, this stuff's obvious to me. Clearly, I'm just a bit further along and I need to kind of humble myself, get rid of the ego and serve others, like share this with others. So I think that is kind of what's changed in my mind. And I'm sorry if I didn't answer your question. I went on a bit of a tangent there.
No, it's all good. So how do you figure out what you need to learn?
Oh, what
And
you
then
need to learn.
where do you go to learn it? Like I talk a lot about online education, right? There's a course for everything. There's a free YouTube video for everything. But I also feel like you don't know what you don't know when you get into a business. That's my big concern.
Yes. So that question, there's so many wonderful leadership books that have been written by people 20, 30 years ago. And, you know, we can plug a list in the bottom. I can't name them all right now, but I've got them on my little bookshelf here. But there's so many great books from people who've been in leadership for years. And a lot of it comes down to managing personality types, setting good expectations, knowing how to negotiate, not getting a heated head. Those are like such key things because if you're moving from an employee to a leader, everything changes. You know, there's a saying people say like what got you here won't get you there, and you have to get these new skills, but I think everyone's capable of it. A lot of it just comes down to addressing how how we've just been trained as like children and as like young adults, and handling like maybe trauma we have or reasons why we react to certain things the wrong way. But it's totally learnable by anyone. It's just a matter of putting forth that effort. But I think reading older leadership material is very important because a lot of content online is very derivative and it's very distracting online because nowadays you have AI that can just write anything in 5 minutes, and you have to be very intentional about where you get information from. So I think looking at some of these best in class like leadership books and sales books from like the last like 50 years are actually a pretty valuable resource.
So do you view leadership as like the uber skill here? Like this is the one thing you should really focus on when you're gonna take over a business.
Leadership matters if you have a team. I think the big skill is when you're acquiring a business, does that business have gaps that you can fill? So I would personally be buying a business that's decent in operations enough not to fall
Yeah.
apart when the owner leaves, but there's big marketing gaps like and that I could fill. Others, it could be different. You might want to acquire a business that has great marketing, but the operations are a mess. You look at the financials and you're just like, you know, it's they bring in 400K a month, but they're wasting 25,000 a month. And there's efficiencies I can add just from the financial side. Typically from like I think the Stanford like MBA classes that they do, a lot of it is focused on operations and finance and things like that. It's not necessarily focused on digital marketing, but I believe digital marketers have a tremendous opportunity they can bring to some of these legacy businesses that people who are heading into retirement are owning that they can bring to the table.
So are there I guess where is the best place to start looking for these businesses? Because that's another challenge. I wouldn't even know if I was gonna look for a local business where to start. Do people list them? Is there like I guess where do you even start looking for a business to acquire?
Yeah, yeah. Biz Buy Sell is like a really popular website. It's like the eBay for small businesses. You can go on there and read everything on them, see their financials. There's also business brokers in just different regions across the US. There's a big one out here in the South Carolina area. And there's other websites that are popping up and spinning up. There's a lot of folks on Twitter who are working as brokers. My friend Samson Jagoras is doing that, and he's building a platform where people can go to buy and acquire a business. Nick Huber is doing that. He has, I think, over 2,000 investors on his list now, he said today. But yeah, I think that that's also an area that's going to be truly disrupted as well. I think over the next 3 to 4 years, there'll be some really high quality platforms. So I would definitely encourage people to use Google as well, as new platforms will probably pop up.
So one of my first mentors in business was Mark Ford, and he wrote a book. I'll probably flash it up on the screen right now, and for anybody watching this video, he talks about the big difference between getting a business. The skills it takes to get a business to 1 million are very different than the skills it takes to get to 10 million. Are very different than the skills to get 100. To very different than the skills to get to 1 billion. And I've actually seen this with clients I've worked with in the past, where I mean, I worked with a couple guys that they built two $10 million plus businesses. As soon
Wow.
as they got it over 80 million, they went bankrupt. Like they
Hmm.
just didn't know how to handle a business at that scale.
Hmm.
Overextended, like got too greedy, went for, reach for the ring and missed. So
Yeah.
I guess where do you think the risks are? Where do you think people need to be self-aware when they get in, they acquire the business for 1 million, they get it to 5 million? What are the risks they need to start watching out for? Because you've worked with a lot of different size businesses.
Yeah, the last agency I worked at before we started Imprint Digital, I was there when I think we were at 400K a year, if I remember, but it grew to 100 million and I got to watch it scale. And I think the witnessing that, one of the things that we learned was putting people in positions to own something that maybe you're not great at is one of the best things you could do. And I don't know why like some of these folks have failed and there's a lot that fail, but I think it's very easy to try to control something because when you have a small business, you might grow it to a certain point and letting go of your baby is like really challenging, but that's also where I think hiring and discernment becomes very important because if you can hire the right people and discern like who can I trust and who has the culture fit, there's three things like do they have a good attitude? Do they have the great effort? And does the performance follow? And if someone has a good attitude and a good effort, the performance should follow over time because they're doing what it takes to get the job done. But if they lack the attitude and effort, you need to quickly let them go. But I think why like businesses fail at larger scale, I think it's just either struggling to put people in place to do their job, or if you do put someone in place to do their job and they're saying, hey, this is what we need to do, sometimes it's really hard to trust other people in a bigger organization. And that's why we see a lot of red tape and bureaucracy that kind of hinders innovation and things happening. And that like slow laggard behavior, I think could be why businesses fail. But it's beyond me. I haven't grown a business past like 1.5 million myself, so I'm maybe not the best to answer.
The common thing I've seen when a business, because I had two big clients, one got up to, like I said, 80 some million, one got over 200 million at one point, that are now out of business. The biggest thing I saw was at some point, one of the executives, usually the top, wouldn't let go of something, just
Yeah.
would not let, like they scaled, they grew it, and they couldn't let go of one aspect of the business that was their baby. It's what that got them to that $10 million mark, but they just couldn't let it go. And
Yeah.
it poisoned the well at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I think one of the fun things for people too, and this is where it's kind of like a heart check for us as entrepreneurs, is as our business grows, are we willing to let go, kind of per both of our points, and put someone else in place? And like you said, does leadership really matter when acquiring a business? It might not as much in the very beginning, like when you're just getting started and it's smaller, but when you do get to that scale, leadership really does matter in a tremendous amount because you set the tone for the organization. And that's where maybe a lot of things do go wrong. And as a leader, you have to trust the people you put in place. And if you don't trust them, it's just going to break down and just diminish like everyone that works in their department and who they lead. Like people really feel that. And I've seen that in different organizations. So, yeah, that's good perspective from you as well.
One of the things we kind of touched on before we started before I hit the record button was the kind of external impact of entrepreneurship, of running
Yeah.
a business in a community. I think about some of these quote unquote crypto guys that got really rich in the last big boom, and they have a lot of money and they're living in Puerto Rico, but they make almost no impact on their community, on the world. They're targets for other people to take advantage of. Whereas there's a lot of people with way smaller net worths that are pillars of their community. So can you kind of
Yeah.
talk about the relationship between business success and having kind of influence in the societal level of the world?
So, yeah, what we were talking about before we hopped on was I believe that entrepreneurs have a role to play and they have a role to play to make their community sustainable. Because if we think about how communities are started, typically you need infrastructure. You might need water, electricity, hospital, food. And then after that, you can build a community around that. And then people have to rally together to like start these small businesses. And in order for a community to thrive, small business owners and just people locally need to come together to make decisions like, how do we want to see our city evolve over time and improve? And the one thing that's happening right now with private equity is a lot of people invest in private equity because the returns can be better than the stock market. Most stock market returns are from these tech stocks. The S&P is essentially flat when you look at monetary expansion, all the money being printed, and you remove like tech stocks. So people love private equity, but there's a downside to that because now every home, every apartment complex is getting bought up. And now because apartments, mobile homes, self-storage has been all bought up and it's over competed by private equity, all these bros are pivoting over to small business. And if I was to like plant one flag, I would tell people, don't just start a business to sell to private equity and sail off. Like consider this, consider keeping that small business in your community, passing it down to your kid, passing the torch, not just selling it to a PE group. Because are they going to do those things to invest in the community? They may, which is great. And if they do, wonderful. But I think it's very important that we are proactive to serve in our community, to donate to causes, to and make an impact at what's happening on a political level. I'm not a big fan of like lobbying and spending all this money nationally. There's a lot of political stuff, and I'm not here to pick sides, but I think us as individuals, as men and as women who are entrepreneurs, we can do things that will materially impact the people in our local area the most. And that's what's going to really move the needle to make the world a better place.
Yeah, I mean, as far as influence goes, the most influence any individual can have is locally. But this goes back to a little bit what we talked about earlier is that what if you sell your business to a big private equity firm and you get a bundle of cash, I mean, you can start another business, you can do something, but what value are you providing to the world next? Because you're going to be, I've seen people get rich and turn into miserable alcoholics or drug addicts, or their kids never, they say their kids never have to work. And then that kid's life is ruined because they have
Yeah.
it's kind of no purpose, but it's because they provide no value. That's why they have no purpose. They don't understand, like, there's something about being human that you have to be doing something for your fellow man.
Yeah.
So yeah, what's the point of selling to private equity? What's the point of that big payday? If you're making good money, you don't need the big payday. I don't know, my opinion.
Yeah, I agree to an extent. And I think people really need to try to discover and understand their purpose. And like I have two kids now, I have a 1 year old and a 2 year old, and I'm thinking more and more about what is my purpose, beyond working. Like whenever I first got my job out of college, like we discussed earlier, 10 years ago, I was just like, I need to work, save, and make money. And I would do anything to just get out of debt. I'm like just struggling to get by for myself. And then
Yeah.
after that, it's like what it says in the Bible of Scripture, the rich man, he's filling his storage to the brim and it's overflowing and he's not sharing. And I think the Lord wants us to fill our cup and take care of ourselves. It's kind of like put on your oxygen mask before you help other people. And it's the same thing in business. Do not hoard for yourself. Once you're taken care of, and it's you brought up a really good point, Henry. Like there's these people who live overseas and they just got all this money. Like, what's their purpose? It's like once you have what you need, don't now just keep having lifestyle creep take over and like crush you as a person. Once your cup's overflowing, now consider what can I do and have a purpose-driven life to serve others, to help others. And I think you bring up a good point. Like if you are going to sell, like think about something that you want to do. And I think a lot of people do that, but a lot of people don't. And it's a really important topic. I think there could be more transparency about, and as men, we should talk about it publicly to, help lead and foster others. Like one thing I'm really passionate about is like helping other men. Like I work with some recovering addicts and we just meet weekly and talk. And just a lot of men in general in America, they don't have fathers. And, that's okay. You don't have to have a dad to be successful in life. It doesn't mean you're going to have major problems, but a father figure is important. And next to a father figure, what really matters is accountability. Like I always joke and say, accountability begins with the first letter of the alphabet because it's the most important thing in the world. Like iron sharpens iron. And I think it's imperative that us as men, share these things, have these discussions, and ask these good questions you're asking, because that's going to influence people and get them being introspective and thinking, well, what can I do to serve others versus just eating lobster, going fishing, and playing golf every day the rest of my life.
Yeah, I mean, I have absolutely nothing against making a lot of money. I just, I've
Yeah.
said this in my, the whole purpose of my business is I want to do well while increasing value for other people. I want to help other people get rich while I get rich. I want to help other people get more freedom and autonomy in their life while doing very well for myself and increasing my own freedom and autonomy. This is not, this is one of those economic principles that the pie grows. It's not that we're all fighting over the same pie. So,
Exactly.
I believe that the better you do for yourself while keeping other people's best intentions in mind, the richer you'll get and the richer life you'll have in many different areas.
Yeah, and I think there's something good about giving back and helping others because it really is an all boats rise thing. Because in your community, if you can, that's why some communities thrive and some don't. You know, some communities have gotten to a point where they're flowing. Now everyone's improving, the life's improving. There's good schools, there's clean water, there's great restaurants, good food available, and some there's not. They don't really have people that think like that. And I think there's just opportunity for entrepreneurs. And if you're in a community that maybe doesn't have everything dreamy, I mean, and you're being called to start a business or acquire a business, definitely do that. I think, God doesn't put these things on our heart without it having a little bit of a pushing us out of our comfort zone. He wants to work through us in ways that are beyond what are in our ability. And if the Lord's putting that on your heart, you should definitely consider it.
So we were speaking about getting rich. So let's talk about Bitcoin a little bit.
Yes.
So what I've been very interested in recently, like it's the most beautiful sound money imaginable. Like I think at least people know that that's my perspective. I'm sure you share that perspective to a large degree. But I want to talk
Yeah.
about the kind of Bitcoin praxis because we need to put it out in the world and actually use it. It doesn't do any good if it's sitting in everybody's cold wallets and, we're talking about it on X and just, tweeting, price go up, your number go up. So your company or you're the head of marketing at Voltage right now, or VP of marketing at Voltage. First of all, can you describe the difference between Bitcoin and the Lightning Network? Just because not everybody listening will know the difference.
Yeah, simply, Bitcoin is a blockchain. It's the layer one of the Bitcoin network, and the Lightning Network's the layer two. So the Lightning Network enables for fast, instant settlement global transactions. Now you can still do instant, or you can still do fast transactions on Bitcoin. 10 minutes is faster than an ACH, right? Like in all intents and purposes, that's faster than the banking system, but it's not fast enough for day-to-day commerce, and that's what the Lightning Network solves. But the Lightning Network does more than that. Digital payments, for instance, on the web, there's never been a way to do those without Visa and MasterCard. The Lightning Network enables digital instant settlement payments on the web. And that's one thing that I think is really meaningful for like these new business models that are necessary for how the internet functions. So just in a really simple level, Bitcoin's the layer one, Lightning Network's the layer two. And at Voltage, like what we do and our entire mission is to build and have the Bitcoin development platform that any enterprise, institution, small business can use to deploy Bitcoin instantly with a couple of clicks, accept and send payments, and have whatever robust infrastructure they need in order to do that. So we've got a suite of tools, but in essence, that's the short answer.
So you understand marketing, especially on the internet, and 'cause I'm sure you kind of understand know very well how sales funnels work with upsells and all that stuff. Is Lightning flexible enough to do like kind of the one-click upsell that you see on so many offers? I guess, is Lightning powerful enough or flexible enough to just continue on the way e-commerce is done right now? Or does it need to be, Amazon's one-click shopping, all that stuff? Or do we need to rethink online commerce to adapt to Bitcoin and the Lightning Network?
So online commerce is shifting. There's something called embedded finance that the legacy finance world's using, and it's where you see like payments just natively embedded into different experiences, whether it be like on Instagram and you see a girl wearing like a cute top and you're like, oh, that's nice. The another lady could click it and then it's like instantly buy it here. Like that wasn't possible on Instagram like 6 years ago, right? So there's these embedded finance tools and even things like a firm where you can like instantly get approved, pay immediately. Lightning Network does have the ability to do that. And there's even ability, let's say on like a blog, like the New York Times or whatever, they make you pay and there's like a paywall. There's functionality where you could pay based on what you actually digest and read or watch. So versus like Netflix, for instance, you might pay 18 or $12 a month, but maybe you catch one movie because you've been challenging. It's like, did you really get the full $12 of value? You can like you could build a new Netflix and structure it to where you only pay for what you watch. So if you got $3 of value, you only pay for that. So it creates very unique ways in which consumer experiences can be made. And it also just, yeah, I'll pause there, but it definitely can be done. Like the Lightning Network can do a lot of these things. And there's creative ways that upsell can happen where you can set like a permission access as a user where it says, hey, limit it to spend $12 a month and prompt me if I need to upgrade. Or you can say, hey, spend whatever I need so that I never get throttled and my website doesn't get down. Like, say you're a blogger and you got like 10,000 visits a month and you go viral and it goes to 1 million. Pay whatever fee it needs to pay to keep my website up because that traffic's valuable for me. You could, for instance, do that as well if you wanted.
That would be a little scary because you can go. I mean, I've seen people's ad budgets where they didn't cap it. Get anyway, people get demolished
Yeah.
on some of that stuff.
Those are the most fun conversations. I've seen a few of those too.
So that's pretty cool. There's actually a lot more flexibility than I kind of realized with the Lightning Network. I guess what's the top price point? So I booked. I'm going to the Bitcoin halving party in El Salvador, and I'm spending
Nice.
a couple weeks down there, traveling around, kind of getting to know visiting all the Bitcoin hotspots. And I know I'm looking for someplace outside the U.S. because this country is a little crazy right now. Oh, so this is what I was gonna say. I paid that on chain. I had a concierge service do it for me. Shop and Bit. Shout out to those guys. Travis did a great job booking the flights
Nice.
and hotels. And then I got a big old invoice at the end of it for all of the flights and hotels for the whole trip. And that made sense to do on the chain, right? Just pay it in Bitcoin because who cares if it's a 10-minute settlement? And the fee wasn't even that bad on that. But I just tried to send somebody a Lightning payment. It was like a tip or something. And I got some crazy, like, it was like 20% of the tip I was trying to send was going to be in fees. So I guess
Which wallet were you using?
that was Strike, I think.
Strike? Okay. Yeah, so Strike is I mean, for all intents and purposes, it's basically like a centralized provider of Lightning payments. So they're like, for those who don't know, Strike lets you pay in dollars and it can travel over Lightning and
Yeah.
people can receive it, or you can send money and they receive it in their local currency. So it really automates how money can flow and settle. But with Strike, if you send a Lightning payment, it's from their infrastructure, their nodes. So you don't get to like custom set your fees. You don't get to select the peers in which your money flows through. Where if you're using a non-custodial wallet or managing this yourself, which you could do, let's say through Voltage, you could then ensure that you're connected with peers and paying through channels that have a lower, more controllable fee. So that is one risk, I guess you could say, from a fee perspective of using a service provider. But I know sometimes that might happen. I've seen a couple people say that happened in the last few weeks. So I don't know when that did, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I've been playing around with different wallets because I'm very new to actually, like I said, the practice actually using Bitcoin. I'm trying to get more accustomed to it. There's just,
Yeah.
up here in Pennsylvania, it's not like I'm going to my local restaurant and they're taking Bitcoin. We're just not at that level yet.
Right.
Where it is kind of like that in El Salvador right now.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah.
I don't know. What are the big opportunities that you see with Voltage? Like, how do you see it scaling? Where do you see it taking off first? Is it online businesses or is there a certain industry? Like, what's the growth opportunity that you see for especially Lightning payments right now?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to Bitcoin startups, it's a pretty big no-brainer for them to use a service like us. Like, but there's also companies who, if they run like an exchange or a wallet, they may use us. A lot of companies that are legacy finance, like let's say these brokerages and exchanges, they're starting to offer ETFs. And in my personal opinion, the fact that ETFs are available and now financial advisors can talk about it and these big players that kind of decide what happens in the stock market. Because let's be honest, like BlackRock, they own voting rights in majority of these companies. So now it's going to be incentivized for companies that they hold within their portfolios to consider Bitcoin as a payments technology for whatever may be going on. So one thing that happens is in like let's say like global trade is like futures contracts are traded and they need to send money instantly and they might choose to use Bitcoin in the Lightning Network versus ACH because it is faster. Some companies are starting to run their own nodes like a Bitcoin node and they want to custody Bitcoin and verify the blockchain because they're considering adding Bitcoin services. MicroStrategy, which Michael Saylor's company, they're creating ways in which organizations can incentivize employees and leverage the Lightning Network for better performance and incentive mechanisms. So there's a lot of ways which it can be used. I think like the standard payments of instant settlement being your own custodian will be very popular for companies. I think some of these like tax like FASB rules that are coming this next year as far as like the accounting method are going to make a
Oh.
pretty big deal. but there's a big learning curve still there. I think a lot of individuals are Bitcoiners. A lot of organizations aren't Bitcoin first yet. They haven't necessarily gone over that curve, but it requires individuals that, run these institutions to learn more, open up, and kind of get the ball rolling for the adoption to happen. But overall, you asked about voltage. Where do I see? I'm very optimistic and bullish on it because the companies I see in our pipeline, there's really big names. They're exploring it. A lot of them aren't just waving the flag. Hey, we're doing Bitcoin, because that might spook people who are investors in these companies. They're like, focus on your core product. I don't want to see you deviating. Bitcoin's a scam in my eyes, but these companies know that Bitcoin is materially changing how commerce happens and how money moves in the world. And they're trying to be ahead of the curve. They're doing their diligence. And that's a really good and encouraging sign to see that people are exploring the technology.
And what about small businesses like mine, right?
Yeah.
I sell a course on freelancing, a course on getting a second passport, get a second residency, investing overseas. They're all
Mm.
500, 200, $500. How do I integrate this with my business? Like, is it I glanced at the Voltage website and I went over my head, like the technical aspects of it.
Yeah, we're a B2B focused product for like developers,
Yeah.
engineers, teams that are building. But we have a product called BTC Pay that would allow a small business or entrepreneur to accept Bitcoin payments like very easily, for like $8 or so a month, I think. But beyond that, there's definite abilities where someone in your case could use Bitcoin beyond simply accepting payments. Like this company Vita, they actually enable you to run let's say a live stream. People can chime in every time they comment. They have to pay to comment or they pay to attend. So it's in some ways like Twitch. But you can also pay people to attend. You might stream them, 10 sats a minute or something. You kind of choose the number and it incentivizes people to show up. So you can kind of do both sides. You're not just taking money from people who are watching. They're not just giving it to you. You can actually incentivize people to come. And if you provide value, they might subscribe and come back. But there's a lot of creative ways you can use Bitcoin and Lightning. There's a lot of startups trying to tackle this with some of these creative payment methods and business models, like we were slightly touching on earlier. That's a pretty deep rabbit hole. But yeah, we could probably talk a lot more about that, but I don't want to take up too much time just kind of discussing
Um,
all of those.
So, all right, in the regulatory framework, because for me, Elizabeth Warren can say whatever she wants, and my coins aren't coming out of cold storage. Like she's not getting at them. But as a business, you really have to comply with any laws, especially the U.S. passes. So,
Yeah.
is there anything coming down the pike that really worries you? Is it all fear mongering on the Senate and House's behalf? Like, what's going on with the regulatory frameworks, and is there anything I guess that you're especially paying attention to?
I'm optimistic as a whole. I'm pretty confident that it's in some ways like gun ownership. There's enough people who have self-custody where it's going to be a challenging thing for those who are against it to stop it. They're going to do everything they can to try, but I'm very optimistic and I'm grateful for what Dennis Porter at Satoshi Action Fund are doing, and a lot of people like the Bitcoin Policy Institute as well, who are creating awareness about this. But I'm fairly optimistic. I don't get too caught up in a lot of that because I'm not a legal guy. It's a little above my head. I really focus on like what I know and what I'm doing. And yeah,
All right, man. We've been going just about an hour now, and I want to respect your time. So, is there anything else you want to wrap up on? Any final thoughts you have for people as we get out of here?
nothing too much. I would just say, I know the core of this conversation's been entrepreneurship. If anyone's going through this process of trying to learn and understand, I mean, I want to be a resource. I don't just say yes to everyone when they're like, "Hey, let's chat," but people who like engage via X or through my YouTube or on LinkedIn that are like intentional about relationship, I really try to set aside time to like help them if I can in any way. So if you want help, I'm more than happy to help. And check out Imprint Digital. It's in my Twitter profile and it's on my LinkedIn if you need help from a marketing perspective. And as it relates to Bitcoin, I'll talk about that all day with anyone. I'm here to advance Bitcoin adoption and I believe in it. And I just want to help people understand the convergence between small business and Bitcoin. And hopefully this has just been helpful for someone today.
All right, and we'll put your YouTube channel in the comments or in the description here, and your Twitter. Anything else you want me to link people to? They can find you.
No, that's great. I have bobbyshell.com, so a pretty straightforward name, but I'm pretty much on Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube. That's the best place to find me.
All right, Bobby. This has been a lot of fun. I really appreciate you coming on today.
I appreciate you too, Henry. Thanks, man.
All right, everybody, stay free.